That chocolate bar sitting in your pantry right now, the one you grabbed without thinking. Same brand your mother always bought. Consumer Reports pulled 48 chocolate products off American grocery shelves and sent them to a lab. Lead and cadmium in every single one. A third of those products cannot legally be called chocolate. The cocoa butter is gone, replaced with palm oil that coats the roof of your mouth like candle wax. The worst offender is a $10 billion company. The premium name you pay extra for because you trusted it. I will show you one word on any label that tells you in 2 seconds if your chocolate is real. 11 to stop buying, 3 that earned it. Gets worse as we go, starting with one that ends up in more American kitchens than it deserves. Number 14. Palmer. If you have ever bought a chocolate bunny at Easter from a dollar store, a gas station, or a drugstore checkout, you have almost certainly held a Palmer product in your hand. R.M. Palmer has been making chocolate-shaped candy since 1948, and that phrase is precise. Chocolate-shaped, not chocolate. Flip a Palmer Double Crisp bunny over and read the ingredients. Sugar is first, then partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, a combination of palm kernel, soybean, and cottonseed, then whey, crisp rice, and finally cocoa. Cocoa powder sits 6th on the list. There is no cocoa butter anywhere on the label. Under FDA standards, a product needs cocoa butter as its sole fat source and a minimum of 10% chocolate liquor to be called milk chocolate. Palmer meets neither requirement. The FDA will not allow them to print the word chocolate on the label, so Palmer prints chocolatey. In 2015, 3 district attorneys in California filed suit against Palmer for deceptive packaging on its Too Tall bunny, alleging unfair business practices and false advertising. The product looked like chocolate. It was shaped like chocolate. It was sold beside chocolate. It was not chocolate. The compound coating Palmer uses instead is essentially vegetable oil tinted brown with cocoa powder. Imagine dipping a bunny mold in melted candle wax mixed with a spoonful of cocoa. That is closer to the product than anything you would call chocolate. Palmer never changed the recipe. They adjusted the wording. That was a brand that never pretended to be the real thing. The one at number 13 did. Number 13. Russell Stover. Those heart-shaped boxes at Valentine's Day. The gold foil. The ribbon. Russell Stover sells the image of a gift, and for decades, the chocolate inside matched the packaging. It does not anymore. Turn a box of Russell Stover assorted chocolates over and read past the bow. High fructose corn syrup is one of the first ingredients listed. Artificial flavors. Preservatives like TBHQ, which is a synthetic antioxidant also used to stabilize varnishes and lacquers. Several products in the line now use compound coatings, the industry term for a chocolate substitute made with vegetable fats instead of cocoa butter. The FDA does not consider compound coating to be chocolate. Freshness is the other problem. Russell Stover produces in enormous seasonal batches months ahead of holidays. Reports from store employees and consumers describe boxes that have been sitting in back rooms and warehouses for 3 to 6 months before they ever reach a shelf. Chocolate does not improve with age when it is made with hydrogenated oils and corn syrup. It develops a chalky white film called bloom, and the filling dries out. What arrives in the box is not what left the factory. Your grandmother gave you Russell Stover because, in her day, it was made properly. The ingredients were shorter. The filling was fresher. She would not recognize what is inside that box today, and she would not buy it if she read the label. One brand on this list, number 2, has published its full ingredient list on every label since the day it was founded, and the entire list fits on a single line. We get there in about 20 minutes. Now imagine a brand that does not bother with a box at all. Number 12. Baby Ruth. Baby Ruth has been an American candy bar since 1920. It is currently manufactured by Ferrara Candy Company, a subsidiary of the Italian conglomerate Ferrero. The bar's own Wikipedia entry describes it as covered in compound chocolate. That is not an editorial opinion. It is the product classification. Read the ingredient label on a Baby Ruth bar. Sugar, roasted peanuts, corn syrup, then hydrogenated palm kernel and coconut oil. Non-fat milk, high fructose corn syrup, cocoa. The cocoa is a flavoring agent, not a structural ingredient. There is no cocoa butter. There is no chocolate liquor. The coating on a Baby Ruth bar is vegetable oil, sugar, and cocoa powder pressed together to look brown. That is like painting a wooden dresser to look like marble and then calling it stone. Compound chocolate typically contains between 8 and 18% cocoa, according to industry analyses. The FDA minimum for milk chocolate is 10% chocolate liquor plus cocoa butter as the sole fat. Baby Ruth meets neither requirement. The brand name says candy bar, never chocolate bar, but it sits in the chocolate aisle, beside real chocolate, wrapped in brown packaging that implies cocoa. 100 years of shelf placement has done the marketing that the label legally cannot. Ferrero, the parent company, reported over $17 billion in global revenue in 2023. It could afford cocoa butter. It chose not to use it here. The same company that makes Baby Ruth also makes the next entry, and it is worse. Number 11. Butterfinger. Butterfinger is also owned by Ferrero. When Nestlé sold its U.S. confections business to Ferrero in 2018, Ferrero promised a renewed focus on quality ingredients. On the Butterfinger recipe, that promise is invisible. The Ferrero website lists the ingredients: corn syrup, sugar, peanuts, vegetable oil, palm kernel and palm oil, peanut flour, non-fat milk. Then, in the fine print, less than 2% of cocoa. Less than 2%. A Butterfinger bar contains more corn syrup than cocoa, more palm oil than cocoa, more peanut flour than cocoa. It contains more salt than cocoa. That is like selling a glass of water with a drop of orange juice and calling it a citrus drink. The Fine Chocolate Industry Association defines fine milk chocolate as cacao liquor, sugar, cocoa butter, milk solids, milk fat, lecithin, and vanilla. A Butterfinger contains none of those except sugar. By every industry definition, it is a peanut candy bar with a thin shell made of vegetable fat tinted with cocoa powder. Ferrero also makes Ferrero Rocher, which uses real chocolate. The same parent company knows the difference between chocolate and compound coating. It makes both, and it chooses product by product where to spend on cocoa butter and where to substitute palm oil. For Butterfinger, it chose palm oil every time. The margin on that single decision is the entire profit on the bar. A brand backed by a company a fraction of Ferrero's size managed to keep real cocoa butter in every bar it makes, even when cocoa prices hit $13,000 a metric ton in 2024. That brand is number one on this list. We will get there. Now, a brand that is not a candy bar. It is a dark chocolate bar sold as a health food. Number 10. Nestlé Perugina. Dark chocolate. Nestlé's Perugina brand is sold as a premium dark chocolate. It costs more per ounce than most of the mass-market bars on this list. The packaging is elegant, almost pharmaceutical in its restraint. The positioning is European sophistication. And when Consumer Reports tested it alongside 27 other dark chocolate bars in their December 2022 investigation, Perugina contained the highest amount of lead of any brand tested, measured against California's Proposition 65 maximum allowable dose level. Lead does not belong in chocolate at any level. It enters during harvesting and processing, when wet cocoa beans are dried on roadsides and absorb lead from soil and vehicle exhaust. Companies that invest in their supply chain, that control where and how beans are dried and processed, can reduce lead contamination significantly. The brands that charge premium prices have the revenue to do that. Perugina charges premium prices and, based on Consumer Reports findings, did not invest accordingly. Consumer Reports wrote letters to Nestlé and 3 other manufacturers in January 2023, accompanied by nearly 55,000 petition signatures, urging them to reduce heavy metal levels. The industry responded through the National Confectioners Association by saying chocolate remains safe to eat. That is like a car company responding to a brake recall by saying driving is generally safe. The answer was technically true and practically meaningless. No company committed to specific reduction targets. There is a brand at number 3 on this list that took the opposite approach to ingredient integrity. The company publicly refused to cut cocoa butter when the rest of the industry was lobbying to dilute the definition of chocolate. Here is what your label will not tell you about heavy metals. But here is what it will tell you about whether your chocolate is even chocolate at all. Number 9. Cadbury, the American version. If you have ever tried a Cadbury Dairy Milk bar in England, and then bought one in the United States, you already know something is wrong. They do not taste the same because they are not the same product. The American version is manufactured by Hershey under a licensing agreement, not by Cadbury itself. The recipe is different. The factory is different. The standard is different. The American Cadbury bar uses PGPR, an emulsifier derived from castor bean oil, as a partial replacement for cocoa butter. PGPR, or polyglycerol polyricinoleate, allows manufacturers to reduce the amount of cocoa butter in a recipe while keeping the chocolate fluid enough to coat and mold. It is cheaper than cocoa butter. It performs a factory function, not a flavor function. Imagine replacing olive oil in a recipe with motor lubricant that keeps the machinery running smoother. That is what PGPR does. It is not there for you. It is there for the equipment. In the United Kingdom, European regulations require milk chocolate to contain a minimum of 20% cocoa solids. In the United States, the FDA requires only 10% chocolate liquor. The American Cadbury bar is formulated to the lower American standard, manufactured in a Hershey factory in Pennsylvania, and sold under a British name that implies a product it no longer contains. If you are buying Cadbury in the United States because you remember what British chocolate tasted like, you are paying for a memory. The bar is made in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It is made to Hershey's cost specifications. The name Hershey is about to appear on this list repeatedly, and each time, the story gets worse. Number 8. Here is the label trick I promised you at the beginning. Flip your chocolate over. If anywhere on the front of the package you see the word chocolatey, with a Y at the end, put it back on the shelf. Under FDA rules, any product that replaces cocoa butter with vegetable oils cannot legally use the word chocolate on its label. The manufacturer must use the word chocolatey, or the phrase chocolate flavored, or made with chocolate. Those are not style choices. They are legal workarounds required because the product failed the definition of chocolate. One word. One letter, actually. That Y at the end of chocolatey is the FDA's quiet admission that the cocoa butter has been replaced with palm oil, palm kernel oil, or coconut oil. Now you know what to look for. Number 8 on the list is Hershey's Cocoa Powder. Hershey's natural unsweetened cocoa is one of the most commonly used baking cocoas in the country. It goes into brownies, hot chocolate, birthday cakes. You are not eating it straight from the tin, so it feels harmless. But in October 2023, Consumer Reports expanded its chocolate testing to 48 products across 7 categories, including cocoa powder. Hershey's cocoa powder came back with lead levels the organization flagged as concerning. This is the cocoa that goes into your holiday baking, into the hot chocolate you make for your grandchildren on a cold morning, into the birthday cake they eat with their hands. Consumer Reports specifically named Hershey in a public statement, urging the company to reduce heavy metal levels across its product line. Hershey's chief financial officer told Reuters the company continues to look for opportunities to reduce those levels. That is not a timeline. That is not a commitment. That is a sentence designed to end a question without answering it. What Hershey did with its dark chocolate bar is worse. Number 7. Hershey's Special Dark. If your doctor ever told you to eat dark chocolate for the antioxidants, this is probably the bar you reached for. Hershey's Special Dark Mildly Sweet Chocolate is one of the most widely available dark chocolate bars in America. It is also one of the most misleading. Consumer Reports tested it in December 2022 and found that a single 1-ounce serving contained lead at 265% above California's maximum allowable dose level. Not 5% above, not 50%, 265% above the threshold in a single ounce. But the heavy metals are only half the story. Flip the bar over. The newer formulations list vegetable oil, specifically palm oil, shea oil, and sunflower oil, alongside cocoa butter. They also list PGPR. In a bar marketed as a premium dark chocolate, the manufacturer is cutting the most expensive ingredient with the cheapest available fats and an emulsifier made from castor bean oil. That is like a jeweler replacing the diamond in a ring with glass and charging the diamond price. The setting still looks right. The stone does not. The FDA classifies dark chocolate, listed officially as semi-sweet or bittersweet, as requiring a minimum of 15% chocolate liquor with no non-cocoa vegetable fats. That is a low bar. Hershey's Special Dark technically clears it, but technically is doing an enormous amount of work in that sentence. A bar can meet the legal floor for chocolate and still be mostly sugar, vegetable oil, and an emulsifier your grandmother would not recognize if she read it aloud. Now we arrive at the seasonal products carrying the same company's most famous names. The deception there is quieter. Number 6. Kit Kat. Seasonal and mini products. Kit Kat in the United States is manufactured by Hershey under a license from Nestle. The standard Kit Kat bar, the one in the red wrapper you buy at the checkout counter, uses real milk chocolate. But several seasonal and mini format Kit Kat products, including holiday-themed shapes and assortment bags, have been produced with compound coatings instead. Compound coating is a blend of cocoa powder, vegetable fats, and sugar. It does not require tempering, it sets faster, and it costs a fraction of what real chocolate costs to produce. For a manufacturer running seasonal production at massive volume, billions of individual pieces for Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Easter, switching even a portion of that output from chocolate to compound coating saves millions per production cycle. That is like a restaurant replacing butter with margarine on the dinner rolls and keeping the same price on the menu. The plate looks identical, the taste does not. The problem is the packaging. A Kit Kat seasonal piece sits in a bag labeled Kit Kat beside Kit Kat bars made with real chocolate. A consumer buying the seasonal bag has no reason to think the product inside is fundamentally different from the standard bar. But it is. The compound-coated piece has a different texture, a waxier mouthfeel, and a coating that does not melt the way chocolate melts. It sits on your tongue instead of dissolving. Under FDA rules, it is not chocolate. It is a chocolate-flavored coating wearing a Kit Kat wrapper. February of this year, someone with the most famous last name in American candy decided to say that out loud. Number 5. Reese's Seasonal and Mini Products. In February 2026, a 70-year-old man named Brad Reese sat down with a bag of Reese's Mini Hearts he had bought for Valentine's Day. He took a bite. He looked at the front of the package. Then he flipped it over. Brad Reese is the grandson of H.B. Reese, the man who invented the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup in 1928. When Brad read the ingredient list on those Mini Hearts, he did not find the words milk chocolate. He found compound coating. He did not find peanut butter. He found peanut butter-style creme. On February 14, 2026, Brad Reese published an open letter to Hershey's corporate brand manager on LinkedIn. It went viral. NBC, CBS, Fox Business, and Fortune all covered the story within days. Brad told NBC News he bought the bag, took a couple of bites, and threw it in the garbage. "It tasted cheap," he said. Hershey responded by saying that the classic Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, the original, has always been made with real milk chocolate and peanut butter. That is true. But what Hershey did not volunteer is how many Reese's branded products, the Mini Hearts, seasonal eggs, and unwrapped bites, are made with compound coatings instead. The grandson of the man who invented the product had to discover this by reading the ingredient label on Valentine's Day, the same way any customer would. On April 1, 2026, Hershey announced it would return all Reese's and Hershey's products to classic milk chocolate and dark chocolate recipes by 2027. That announcement came 6 weeks after the grandson's letter went viral. The question is whether they will follow through quietly or reverse course the next time cocoa prices move. This brings us to number 4. Every loyal customer who defends this brand is about to read something uncomfortable. Number 4. Hershey's Milk Chocolate Bar. Every loyal consumer who defends this brand points to the same thing. Tradition. It has been around forever. It tastes like childhood. Milton Hershey built the factory, the town, the school. But tradition does not override an ingredient list. And Hershey's ingredient list changed. This is the brand in most American kitchens. The brown wrapper with the silver lettering. Hershey's is not just a chocolate bar, it is the chocolate bar, the one that defined what chocolate meant for 4 generations of Americans. And it is owned by a company worth over $10 billion that spent 2 decades quietly replacing its most important ingredient while keeping the price the same. The timeline is documented. In 2007, the Chocolate Manufacturers Association, whose members included Hershey, Nestle, and Archer Daniels Midland, formally petitioned the FDA to change the legal definition of chocolate. They wanted permission to replace cocoa butter with vegetable oils, up to 5%, and still call the product chocolate. The petition triggered hundreds of outraged letters from consumers. The FDA rejected it in June 2007, stating that chocolate lovers need not be alarmed. Hershey reformulated anyway. In September 2008, multiple news outlets reported that several Hershey products had been reformulated to replace a portion of cocoa butter with vegetable oil. Because the new versions no longer met FDA standards, Hershey changed labels from milk chocolate to chocolate candy and made with chocolate. PGPR, the castor bean oil emulsifier, appeared on the ingredient list. It reduces the amount of cocoa butter needed by making the mixture flow more efficiently through factory machinery. That is not an ingredient for your mouth. It is an ingredient for a conveyor belt. In 2015, Hershey announced it would remove PGPR and switch to simpler ingredients. The company then reintroduced PGPR, stating it now comprised less than 1% of the formula. When cocoa prices surged to nearly $13,000 per metric ton in late 2024, a 300% increase from the year prior, Hershey accelerated reformulations across its product line. More products shifted from chocolate to compound coatings. Retail prices went up, cocoa content went down. Consumers paid more money for less chocolate. That is not a supply chain problem. That is a decision made in a boardroom. A few thousand readers get next month's verdicts before they shop again, and the link is in the description. Every brand on that list had one decision to make: cocoa butter or vegetable oil, chocolate or compound coating. 11 chose the cheaper option. That pattern is worth naming. None of those companies lacked the money. Hershey is a $10 billion corporation. Ferrero owns Nutella. Nestle is the largest food company on Earth. They chose vegetable oil because the customer would not check, and because the packaging would do the selling the ingredient list legally could not. 3 brands made the opposite choice. They kept cocoa butter when the cost doubled, they kept it when it tripled, and they gave up margin to keep the product real. Ranked on 3 things: whether cocoa butter is the sole fat in the chocolate, whether the company resisted industry pressure to weaken the standard, and whether you can buy it this week at your nearest grocery store. Number 3. Dove. Dove chocolate is manufactured by Mars Incorporated. What Mars did in 2007, while Hershey and Nestle were petitioning the FDA to let them replace cocoa butter with vegetable oil, tells you everything about this company. Mars refused, publicly. At the All Candy Expo in Chicago, Mars announced it would continue using 100% cocoa butter in its U.S. chocolate products. The company called the industry petition to change the definition of chocolate a mistake. Mars did not hedge. It did not issue a statement about evaluating options. It said no. Pick up a Dove Promises bag and read the label. Milk chocolate is listed first. Inside that parenthetical, you find sugar, cocoa butter, chocolate, skim milk, milk fat, lactose, soy lecithin. Cocoa butter is the sole fat in the chocolate, with none of the palm oil, palm kernel oil, PGPR, or castor bean emulsifiers that showed up on every bad label in this video. You can buy Dove at virtually every grocery store, drugstore, and big box retailer in America. A Dove Promises bag runs about $4 for 3.30 ounces. That works out to roughly $1.20 per ounce. Hershey's milk chocolate bar, the one that swapped its cocoa butter for palm oil, costs about $3.50 for 1.55 ounces, roughly $2.25 per ounce. You pay nearly double for Hershey, and Hershey is the one using compound coatings. Dove is real chocolate that costs less per ounce than the most famous substitute on this list. That math is worth knowing before your next trip down the candy aisle. Number 2. Ghirardelli. Ghirardelli has been making chocolate in San Francisco since 1852. That is not decoration for a label. It matters because this company has survived cocoa price swings for more than 170 years without ever abandoning cocoa butter. Pick up a Ghirardelli Intense Dark, 72% cacao bar, and flip it over. The entire ingredient list fits on a single line: unsweetened chocolate, sugar, cocoa butter, vanilla extract, soy lecithin. 5 ingredients. You will not find palm oil, vegetable fat blends, PGPR, emulsifiers derived from castor beans, or high fructose corn syrup anywhere on that list. Cocoa butter is the only fat. That is the line I mentioned 20 minutes ago, the brand that prints its full ingredient story on one line. This is that brand. In Consumer Reports' 2022 testing of 28 dark chocolate bars, 5 of 7 exceeded California's maximum allowable dose levels for lead, cadmium, or both. Ghirardelli's results did not land in the worst tiers at comparable cocoa percentages. Real cocoa butter and lower heavy metals from a bar you can buy at Target, Walmart, Kroger, or any grocery chain in the country. A Ghirardelli Intense Dark bar costs about $4 for 3.5 ounces. That is roughly $1.14 per ounce. Palmer's compound chocolate costs less per unit, but Palmer's product is not chocolate. Comparing Ghirardelli to Hershey's Special Dark, which sells for about $1.70 per ounce, you get real cocoa butter, a 5-ingredient label, and a cleaner heavy metals profile for 30% less money per ounce. The cheaper bar is the better bar. That does not happen often. Ghirardelli is owned by the same company that holds the #1 spot on this list. That is not a coincidence. Number 1. Lindt. Lindt and Sprüngli was founded in Zurich, Switzerland in 1845. Rodolphe Lindt invented the conching machine in 1879. the device that transforms gritty cocoa paste into smooth, meltable chocolate. Every chocolate bar in the world that dissolves on your tongue instead of crumbling exists because of what this company built 147 years ago. Lindt did not just make chocolate. It made modern chocolate possible. As of 2026, 100% of Lindt's cocoa volumes are sourced as Rainforest Alliance certified. The company runs its own farming program across 6 countries: Ghana, Ecuador, the Dominican Republic, Madagascar, Papua New Guinea, and Peru. Since 2008, the Lindt and Sprungly farming program has worked directly with cocoa farmers on growing practices, traceability, and fair pricing. This is not a sticker licensed from a third party. It is a supply chain the company built and staffed from the ground up over nearly 2 decades. Pick up a Lindt Excellence 70% dark chocolate bar. The ingredients are chocolate, sugar, cocoa butter, cocoa powder, bourbon vanilla beans. Cocoa butter is the only fat, and you will not find palm oil, vegetable fat blends, or PGPR anywhere on the wrapper. When cocoa futures surged past $12,000 per metric ton in late 2024, Lindt raised its consumer prices by nearly 16% rather than reformulate. The company absorbed the higher cost through transparent pricing, not through ingredient substitution. It chose to remain chocolate when the entire industry was choosing to stop being chocolate. A Lindt Excellence bar costs about $4 for 3.5 ounces. That is roughly $1.14 per ounce, the same price as Ghirardelli and less than what Hershey charges for a bar that has palm oil where cocoa butter used to be. The company that invented the process every chocolate maker on Earth depends on costs the same as the mid-shelf options and less than the brand that abandoned its own recipe. Lindt also owns Ghirardelli. 2 of the 3 real chocolate brands on this list share one parent company whose entire business model is built on one belief: cocoa butter is not optional. When the company at the top of this list maintains that standard, every brand underneath it keeps cocoa butter in the bar. That is not a coincidence. That is a sourcing philosophy, and it survived the worst cocoa market in a century. The compound coatings in this video showed up after cocoa prices moved, and they can be quietly reformulated again next quarter. What is on the shelf today may not match what is on the shelf in 6 months. The label report rechecks every verdict monthly, so you know before your next grocery run. Scan the code on screen or use the first link below. $10 a month, cancel anytime. Go annual and 5 months are free. Just want the method? Both guides are $15 one time. Same link.